Welcome, dear dreamer, to Whispers of the Night. Tonight, I'll be sharing with you a gentle bedtime story titled The Carousel of Moonlit Dreams. Before we begin, let me invite you to take a slow, deep breath in and out. This channel is here to guide you into rest, into calm, and into a world of wonder spun softly by words. If you're new here, I would love for you to subscribe to Whispers of the Night. By doing so, you'll always have a quiet place to return to, a place of whispered stories, gentle relaxation, and dreamy journeys waiting just for you. And if you've already joined our little dreamer circle, thank you. Your presence makes this space glow a little brighter. Tonight's story will take you into a forest bathed in silver light, where an enchanted carousel waits to carry you into forgotten dreams and whispered wishes. But before we step into the story together, let's prepare your mind and body for rest. So find a comfortable position. Let your blanket settle around you, and allow the night to hold you softly. It's time to drift into stillness, into calm, into sleep. Before our story begins, let's take a few moments to settle deeply into relaxation. Your body has carried you through the day, and now it is time to let it rest. Close your eyes gently, if they're not closed already. Notice the weight of your body against the bed or the surface beneath. You feel how it supports you completely, without effort. Without question, allow yourself to be held by this stillness. Take a slow breath in, letting the coolness of air fill your lungs, and then exhale gently, feeling your body soften as the breath leaves you. We'll do that again, inhaling calm and exhaling the day. One more time. Inhale light and exhale every last bit of tension. Now, turn your attention to your toes. Imagine them softening as though they're sinking into warm sand. This relaxation moves upward through your feet, ankles, and calves. Your legs feel heavy, as though they belong to the earth itself. Let them rest. The calm rises into your hips and lower back. If there's any tightness here, allow it to melt, like wax under gentle flame. Each breath carries you deeper, and deeper still. Now the relaxation flows through your stomach and chest. With every inhale, you welcome peace. With every exhale, you release what no longer serves you. Your heart beats gently, steady as the rhythm of the tides. The wave of calm moves to your shoulders, softening them down through your arms. Your wrists, your fingertips, your hands loosen, ready to dream. At last, the calm rises into your neck, your jaw, your cheeks. Let your tongue rest softly, your brow smooth, your eyes heavy. Feel your whole face soften as though it were lit only by candlelight. Your entire body is now relaxed, heavy, supported, safe. You are ready to drift into dream. And as you do, you'll hear the story unfold. Tonight, the Carousel of Moonlit Dreams will carry you into silver forests and starry skies. All you need to do is let go and allow the night to take you where it wishes. The story begins now. The Carousel of Moonlit Dreams. The silver glow. Vespera wandered through the forest, her bare feet brushing the cool moss, each step sinking gently into the softness of earth and memory. The trees whispered above her, their long branches heavy with evening's hush. A faint wind carried the perfume of damp leaves and wildflowers, a fragrance so subtle it felt like a dream wrapping itself around her senses. She did not know why she had wandered so far this night, only that her heart had been restless, pulling her deeper into the woods where shadows tangled and moonlight poured down in narrow rivers between the trees. Ahead of her, a trail of golden fireflies appeared, as though they had been waiting for her all along. They drifted in slow arcs, weaving patterns in the air, their glow pulsing like the beating of tiny hearts. Vespera tilted her head, a small smile tugging at her lips, for the sight felt like a secret invitation written in the language of light. The fireflies gathered together, then stretched apart, forming a path that led into a part of the forest she had never dared to enter. Her curiosity tugged at her feet before her thoughts could catch up. The forest around her grew quieter the farther she went, as though the night itself held its breath. No crickets sang, no owls called, only the sound of her breath and the rustle of her hair against her shoulders. The golden flickers beckoned onward until the thick wall of trees suddenly thinned, and before her eyes unfolded a hidden clearing, bathed entirely in silver moonlight. Her breath caught. There, in the very center of the clearing, stood something no forest should ever hold, a carousel. It was still and silent, yet glowing faintly as though it carried a secret pulse. Its canopy was striped in fading shades of ivory and midnight blue, the colors softened by time and moonlight. Vespera stepped closer, her eyes widening. The carved horses were unlike any she had ever seen, each one frozen mid-stride, as though captured in the very act of galloping through some endless meadow. Their manes flowed in sculpted waves, their saddles etched with intricate, delicate patterns that shimmered faintly under the silver glow. Some bore jewels in their bridles, others held painted flowers twined around their necks, as though each horse carried a story within its stillness. Her heartbeat quickened. Something was calling her. The air around the carousel shimmered, faintly alive, as though the clearing itself was holding its breath in anticipation of her next move. She stepped closer, her bare feet brushing through the grass, which glowed with dew that caught the moonlight like fragments of fallen stars. The fireflies scattered now, floating upward and vanishing into the canopy of night, as if their task of leading her here was complete. Vespera circled slowly, her eyes tracing the curve of the wooden platform. She reached out with hesitant fingers and touched the edge. To her surprise, the wood was not cold and weathered, but warm, humming faintly beneath her palm, as though it had remembered every rider who had ever placed their trust in it. She gasped softly, pulling her hand back, but the pull inside her chest only grew stronger. One of the horses seemed to gleam brighter than the rest. Its coat was painted a soft pearl white, with faint silver threads curling across its flanks in patterns that resembled constellations. Its eyes, though carved and still seemed to hold a depth that stirred her heart. She stepped closer, lifting a hand to stroke its mane. The air around her shifted. The silence of the clearing grew deeper, denser, as though she had crossed into some space between worlds. She whispered, though she did not know why, "Are you alive?" Of course, the horse did not answer, but she felt something, an echo deep inside her chest, a resonance that belonged not to words, but to memory. Vespera closed her eyes. For a moment, she thought she heard music, faint and fragile, like the ghost of a lullaby carried on the wind. She opened her eyes quickly, but the carousel remained still. Yet the glow, she noticed now, had deepened. The moon seemed to lean closer to the earth, pouring all of its light upon the clearing, as if to illuminate only this forgotten place. The carousel shone with it, reflecting the silver beams until the whole structure seemed to breathe. Shadows flickered around her, not menacing, but soft like fragments of dreams half remembered. Her fingers lingered on the horse's mane, tracing the carved strands. She felt an odd warmth rise in her, not fear, but an ache, a recognition, as though she had always known this place existed somewhere hidden, waiting for her. It was not merely curiosity that pulled her closer. It was longing. She remembered nights as a child, sitting by the window, gazing at the moon until her eyes blurred with tears she could not explain. She had always felt that the world held more than what could be touched or named. Now, here it was before her, a secret, unveiled in silver glow dot. Her steps carried her onto the platform. The wood creaked faintly beneath her weight, yet the sound was not harsh. It was like a sigh of welcome. She placed her hand on the cold pole beside the pearl-white horse and leaned against it, feeling the odd vibration in her skin. For a moment, she closed her eyes, and the faint music returned. Stronger, now a distant carousel tune, drifting from nowhere, familiar yet unknown. It wrapped around her like a memory of something she had never lived, yet had always carried in her heart. The horse beneath her hand seemed to store. Perhaps it was her imagination. Its silver patterns flickered like starlight, and she thought she saw its carved chest rise, as though it were breathing. Vespera drew in a sharp breath, her pulse quickening, but she could not pull away. Something was calling her, not with words, but with presence, a tide of unseen energy flowing into her veins, urging her to stay, to listen, to remember. The silence of the forest thickened again. Not even the wind moved now. The carousel glowed brighter, every horse shimmering faintly. The air quivered as though balancing on the edge of change. Vespera's breath trembled out of her. She felt as though she stood on the threshold of a dream, balanced between the world she knew and something greater, vaster, more mysterious, she whispered again, softly, as if the clearing itself could hear her. Why am I here? The only answer was the carousel's glow. Yet in her heart, something stirred a sense that she had not found this place by accident, that the forest, the fireflies, the moonlight had led her here for a reason. The silver glow wrapped around her like a cloak, comforting and strange. She felt it seep into her, soft as a lullaby, steady as the rhythm of a heartbeat. Her eyelids grew heavy, though she was not tired. It was as though the carousel was weaving her into its story, drawing her into the silence of its waiting. She leaned her forehead against the horse's carved neck, her breath mingling with the faint shimmer of silver. Her fingers pressed tighter around the pole. The music swelled faintly again, rising and fading like the tide. The carousel wanted to move. She could feel it. Not yet, not now, but soon. She did not know how she knew this, only that the thought rang true in her bones. The clearing was holding its breath, the carousel waiting, the horses dreaming, and she, Vespera, had been chosen to stand here in the moonlight, to feel the first stirrings of the awakening. She lifted her head slowly, her gaze sweeping over the circle of horses, each frozen mid-stride, each shimmering faintly, as though their stillness was not the end, but a pause before a beginning. Something inside her whispered, fragile, certain, you are part of this. Vespera did not know what this was, but as the silver glow deepened around her, as the carousel breathed beneath her hand, she felt her heart open like a flower to the moonlight. The night wrapped her in silence, in silver, in possibility, and though the carousel remained still, Vespera knew she was no longer only a visitor in the forest. She was woven now into the story of this hidden place, the girl who had answered the call of light. The carousel was waiting, and so was she. A whisper in the wind. The night air carried a soft, musical hum. It rose faintly at first, so delicate, but as she stood in the clearing, it grew stronger, shaping itself into something unmistakable. It was music, thin and spectral, as if woven from threads of starlight and air. The melody had no clear beginning, no end. It was a lullaby without words, a song that felt older than the trees, older even than the moonlight that bathed the carousel in silver glow. Vespera stood transfixed, her pulse drumming like a second heartbeat. The carousel before her seemed to stir beneath the sound, its painted canopy gleaming faintly, its horses shimmering with light as though catching fire from within. She had not moved, and yet the music swelled, unfurling into the silence of the night. Her eyes swept over the figures, the horses' glassy eyes, which before had seemed carved and lifeless, now glinted with strange depth. They seemed to follow her as she moved slowly along the circle, each gaze a flicker of recognition. A chill rippled down her arms, though the night itself was not cold. Then came the voice. It was not loud. It was not even clear, not the voice of man or woman. It was softer than breath, lighter than the stirring of leaves, a whisper, carried within the very wind that brushed against her cheek. "Come closer," it murmured, as though the air itself bent to shape the words. Vespera froze, her heart hammering. She spun quickly, glancing into the trees, half expecting someone to step out from the shadows. But there was no one, only the endless curtain of dark trunks, the velvet spread of sky, the hovering silence. Her breath trembled out of her. "I heard you," she whispered, though her own voice sounded strange against the hush. The carousel answered not with words, but with a deeper pulse of music, a slow and steady rhythm that seemed to echo through her very bones. She felt it tugging her forward, pulling her toward the center where the pearl-white horse waited. Its brass pole caught the moonlight, gleaming like molten fire. Vespera's gaze lingered there, and before she knew it, her trembling hand was reaching out. Her fingertips brushed the metal. The world shifted. The carousel quivered beneath her touch, not with the creak of old wood or the groan of forgotten machinery, but with something far more alive. The platform shuddered faintly, as if it had drawn in its first breath after centuries of slumber. The horses flickered with light. Their saddles gleamed. Their painted eyes glistened with wetness that was not paint. Vespera gasped and staggered back, her hand still hovering near the pole. Her heart raced, yet her feet would not flee. The silver glow around her swelled, saturating the clearing until it seemed she stood not in a forest, but within a dome of moonlight. The voice returned, gentle, coaxing. "You have touched the key. Do not be afraid." Her lips parted, but no words came. She wanted to ask who spoke, what this place was, why she was here, but the questions tangled and dissolved in her throat. Instead, the carousel answered for her. The canopy above creaked faintly, tilting as if stretching after sleep. The horses shifted, not quite moving, but no longer perfectly still. Their legs, frozen mid-stride, seemed to vibrate with a yearning to gallop. The air thickened, humming with energy. Vespera's breath trembled. She felt as though the carousel was not only awakening, but watching her, responding to her presence. The brass pole beneath her fingers warmed, as though infused with light. Then, faint but certain, the whisper curved around her once more. "Step closer, and I will show you wonders beyond imagining." Her heart pounded against her ribs, fierce and frightened, yet her feet obeyed before her mind could resist. She stepped onto the platform, the boards groaning gently beneath her weight. She placed both hands now on the brass pole, steadying herself beside the pearl-white horse. The moment her palms pressed fully against the metal, the carousel exhaled. It was not air, but light. A shiver of silver burst outward, rippling across the clearing. The trees glowed faintly, their trunks painted in luminescent hues. The fireflies returned, hundreds of them, swirling in spirals, as if summoned back to witness the awakening. The music swelled clearer, louder, yet still impossibly soft, as though it came from inside her own chest. Vespera clung to the pole. Why? The horse beneath her seemed to tremble, its silver constellations glowing brighter, as if they were no longer painted, but alive, burning with real stars. Its head tilted just so, the faintest quiver. And though it made no sound, she felt the weight of its gaze upon her. The carousel creaked again. The platform gave a slow, steady lurch. Vespera staggered, clutching the pole. Her breath caught as the realization hit her. The carousel was moving. It began slowly, so slowly she wondered if it were only her imagination. Yet the world shifted beneath her feet. The stars above bent slightly with the motion. The horses swayed gently, as if testing their stillness. The canopy shivered with each turn. The music deepened, weaving harmonies she could not explain, songs layered upon songs. Her heartbeat synchronized with the rhythm, until she no longer knew whether the sound she heard was the carousel or herself. The whisper came again, closer this time, brushing her ear like a secret shared in trust. This is only the beginning. Her eyes widened, tears rising unbidden. The words filled her with both wonder and sorrow, though she could not explain why. She wanted to ask, what beginning? Why her? But her throat refused. The carousel spun faster, now gentle but steady, its glow spilling outward until the clearing seemed to dissolve into silver mist. She closed her eyes. The wind brushed against her cheeks, cool yet strangely warm, carrying the music deeper into her. Her hair streamed behind her as the platform turned, and for the first time she realized the carousel was not bound by the earth. It was not merely circling the clearing. The forest faded. The stars bent closer. When she opened her eyes, she gasped. The trees were gone. The ground itself had disappeared beneath them. The carousel now spun through a sea of mist and light, its horses glowing like guardians of a celestial path. Above, constellations blazed brighter than she had ever seen, sharp and near, as though she could reach out and trace them with her fingertips. Her breath caught in awe. The voice whispered again, softer now, woven into the melody of the stars. Hold fast, the journey begins. The carousel turned, carrying her not through a forest, but through realms unseen, a tide of silver sweeping them into the unknown. Vespera's trembling fingers clung to the brass pole, her heart pounding with fear and wonder, her spirit lifted by the hum of a destiny she could not yet name. The pearl-white horse beside her gleamed, alive now with starlight, its carved muscles taut with unspent energy. Its eyes shone with a depth that was no longer glass, but something older, wilder. It looked at her, not past her, not through her, but at her, and in that gaze, Vespera felt the truth. The carousel was not merely a machine, nor a forgotten relic. It was a threshold, a bridge between the world she had known and the mysteries that waited beyond. And she, trembling, breathless, wide-eyed beneath the moon, had stepped willingly into its circle. The whisper in the wind curled around her one last time, sealing the moment with promise. You are chosen. the silver glow blazed brighter, and the carousel carried her forward into the unknown night. Riders of forgotten dreams, the carousel began to turn, slowly at first, with the faintest groan of wood and whisper of air, as though the great circle had not moved for centuries. Vespera gripped the reins of the pearl-white horse, her fingers trembling, her breath shallow. She could feel the vibration beneath her feet, a pulse rising through the wooden boards and into her body, synchronizing with the quick rhythm of her heart. The world tilted, the clearing faded, the soft moss and silent trees melted into threads of light, dissolving into nothingness as the carousel carried her beyond the boundaries of the forest. What replaced it was something so vast, so breathtaking, that her breath caught and her eyes stung with tears. She could not stop. Beneath her, the ground dissolved into glittering starlight, a river of constellations flowing endlessly in every direction. It was as if the earth itself had melted into a mirror of the heavens, stars blooming like wildflowers across an infinite field. Each spark glowed and pulsed, their brilliance reflected in her wide eyes. The air was no longer heavy with damp forest scents, but crisp and cool, tinged with a sweetness that tasted like midnight dew above her. The skies stretched open into a canvas of endless moons. Not one moon, not the familiar silver disk she had always gazed upon as a child, but hundreds moons of every hue, each one glowing with its own strange light. Some were pale blue, like frozen tears, others golden, like lanterns hung across eternity, a few deep crimson, glowing as though alive with hidden flame. They drifted across the firmament, slow and deliberate, casting silver trails that shimmered like falling veils. And then beyond even the moons rolled oceans that sparkled like molten glass, glimmering with iridescent hues. Waves rose and fell in silence, carrying light within them like captured stars. The carousel floated above their gleaming surfaces, its reflection rippling and stretching as though the sea itself wished to remember its form. Vespera's lips parted in awe. She clung to the reins tighter, her hair streaming behind her in the rushing wind, her heart soaring with joy and wonder. She had never known such beauty existed, had never dared to imagine it. It was not like stepping into a dream, for even dreams seemed fragile compared to this expanse. It was as if the night itself had taken her by the hand and pulled her into its heart. The carousel spun faster, each turn unveiling new visions. Vespera's eyes widened as she glimpsed worlds that did not belong to her waking life. A field of endless lanterns, floating upward into the sky with no hands to release them. A forest of crystal trees, their branches dripping with silver fruit that glowed softly as though cradling the memory of suns. A city of forgotten towers rising from clouds, their windows glowing warmly. though no voices stirred inside them. Everywhere she looked, she saw pieces of stories untold. The air shimmered around her, and she began to realize these visions were not just landscapes. They were fragments of something deeper. They were forgotten dreams. She could feel them. Each turn of the carousel carried not only her body but her soul, brushing against memories left behind by countless others. She glimpsed the dream of a child who once wished to fly, their laughter echoing faintly in the rush of wind. She saw the wish of a painter who longed to capture the moon, but never could. Their colors spilled into the sky like liquid rainbows. She felt the heartbeat of a lover who dreamed of holding hands across an ocean, their yearning still warm in the fabric of eternity. These were not her dreams, and yet they wrapped around her as though she had lived them. They poured into her chest, filling her with a sweetness and an ache so deep that tears slipped down her cheeks. The carousel turned again. A figure appeared in the mist, beside her rider upon a horse, their outline faint and translucent, glowing softly as though woven from candle smoke. The figure did not speak, but Vespera felt them, a dream left behind, a soul once carried into the night by this same carousel. The figure's eyes met hers for a fleeting moment, and though no words passed, she felt their wuxia desire long ago whispered into the dark, carried now on the spinning circle of light. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, the rider dissolved into the wind, leaving only a shimmer of silver dust. Vespera's heart thudded painfully. She looked around, and she saw more. There were other riders. One by one, they appeared, glowing figures upon gleaming horses, their faces tender, their eyes bright with memory. Some were children with laughter like bells, clutching toys that no longer existed. Others were elders, their expressions lined with both sorrow and peace. Some were faceless, carrying only the shape of a wish, the essence of longing that outlived the dreamer. They spun with her, a silent procession of forgotten dreamers. They did not frighten her. Instead, their presence filled her with warmth, as though she had stepped into a family of souls she had always belonged to. The carousel carried them all living, gone, forgotten, remembered together in the eternal dance of night. Vespera reached out a trembling hand toward the nearest rider. Her fingers brushed the air, but the figure dissolved just before she could touch. And yet, in that near contact, she felt the echo of their dream pulse inside her heart. The music deepened. It was no longer just a faint lullaby. Now it swelled into chords, rich and full, layered with voices that were not voices, but whispers of wishes. She heard laughter, sighs, carousel woven into a single song of longing. She closed her eyes and let it wash over her. The carousel turned faster, each spin carrying her deeper into the embrace of the night. She no longer feared losing herself. She wanted to, for in these dreams she found pieces of herself she had never known, fragments of wonder, courage, sorrow, and love she had never lived, yet which now blossomed within her as if they had always been hers. She leaned against the pearl-white horse, her arms wrapped around its neck, her tears wetting the starlit mane. The horse felt alive, strong, steady beneath her, as though it carried her not only through space, but through the hidden corridors of memory itself. She whispered into its ear, though she knew it could not answer, "Don't let me fall." The horse shivered, its silver constellations glowing brighter, and she knew she would not dot the wind swirled around her, cool and fragrant, carrying the scent of things that had never been roses, that bloomed only in forgotten gardens. Salt spray from seas no longer mapped, the warmth of letters never written but always imagined. Each fragrance filled her chest until she was dizzy with wonder. The carousel's light flared brighter, as though feeding on her heartbeat. The riders of forgotten dreams circled with her, their forms weaving in and out of clarity, some smiling, some silent, all shimmering with the fragility of hope. And through it all, she felt the night itself embracing her. Not the night of forests and shadows, but the night as it truly was, endless, eternal, filled with every dream ever whispered into darkness. She closed her eyes once more, and the carousel carried her on. She did not know where it would end, or if it would ever end. All she knew was that she had become part of something infinite, something far beyond herself. Every turn revealed more wonders. Every breath filled her with another soul's dream. Every heartbeat whispered that she, too, was a rider now woven into the circle of forgotten dreams, and the night held her gently as though she had always belonged to its embrace. The Keeper of Dreams. At the center of the spinning carousel, where no figure had stood before, a shape began to form. It rose slowly from the heart of the circle, not stepping forward, but unfolding from the light itself. Vespera blinked through the silver glow, her breath catching as the brilliance condensed into the outline of a figure cloaked in starlight. Their cloak shimmered with endless constellations, each fold alive with galaxies, each movement trailing threads of moonlit fire. Their face was hidden beneath a hood that seemed woven from midnight shadow, darker than the space between the stars. When they raised their head, the world around Vespera seemed to grow quieter, as though the music itself bowed in reverence to their presence. The figure spoke. Their voice was not loud, nor heavy, nor commanding. It was soft as the rustle of wind through ancient leaves, as the sigh of water slipping over stone. Yet it carried effortlessly, folding into her heart as though it had always been there. "I am the Keeper of Dreams," they said. The words sank into her bones, leaving her trembling. She held the brass pole tighter, her knuckles pale against its glow. The carousel continued its spin, steady and graceful, yet it no longer seemed to move through places. Instead, it spun in stillness, as though the entire world had paused to listen. The keeper's cloak shifted, galaxies spilling across its folds. They lifted one long hand, pale and luminous, and Vespera saw that their fingers shimmered like glass dipped in moonlight. "This carousel," they whispered, "is no mere relic of wood and paint. It carries what mortals leave behind when their eyes open at dawn. The laughter that vanishes, the courage that dissolves, the wishes too fragile to follow into day here, they remain. It is a vessel of forgotten wonders, a sanctuary for dreams." Vespera's chest rose and fell in shallow, trembling breaths. She felt the truth of their words ripple through her. She thought of all the mornings she had awakened with scraps of dreams dissolving in her hands like mist. How many of those fragments had fallen into this place? How many dreams of hers now circled with her, drifting unseen among the riders she had glimpsed in silver haze? The keeper's shadowed face tilted toward her. Though their eyes were hidden, Vespera felt the weight of their gaze, gentle, ancient, and unyielding. "If you ride long enough," they said, "you may glimpse your truest wish. Not the fleeting desires of passing days, not the shallow wants of restless minds, but the root of youth, a dream that binds your spirit." Her lips parted, but no sound came. Her heart pounded so loudly, she thought the carousel itself must hear it. The keeper's voice curled deeper, a thread of warning hidden in its softness. "But choose carefully, for dreams are not illusions. They are power. To touch one, to claim it, is to shape yourself forever. What you call forth will remain, and what you abandon may be lost." Vespera shivered, the words settling into her with the weight of both promise and peril. She thought of the riders she had seen, children, elders, faceless wanderers of light. Had they too been drawn here by the keeper? Had they chosen, or had they lost their chance? She wanted to ask, but her throat was bound by awe. The carousel spun on, slower now, as if waiting. The music softened to a single thread, faint but steady, a heartbeat that matched her own. Vespera pressed her palm against the white horse's neck, its starlit mane brushing against her skin like silk. Her voice, when it came, was fragile. "Why me?" The keeper's head lifted slightly, galaxies flickering across the folds of their cloak. "Why any dream?" they whispered back. "Because it was born. Because it longed to live. Because it called, and you listened." The answer struck her like a bell, ringing deep into the hollow spaces of her being. She thought of that night's fireflies, how they had led her through the forest. She thought of the silver glow pulling her forward, how she had followed without knowing why. Was this what they meant, that she had listened? The keeper's hand swept outward, and the air trembled. Around the carousel bloomed visions once more, but not like before. These were sharper, brighter, each one glistening as though held close for her alone. She saw a child standing on a hill, hands outstretched toward a falling star. She saw a girl walking barefoot through waves of glowing flowers. She saw herself, but not herself, folder, stronger, holding something radiant in her palms. Her breath hitched. The carousel slowed further, its spin turning languid, each movement carrying her deeper into these shifting dreams. "Do you see them?" the keeper asked. their voice like silver threads woven into the night. "Yes," Vespera whispered. Her throat ached, her eyes blurred with tears. "These are dreams that touch your spirit. Some belong to you, some brush against you from others. They gather here, circling like moths about flame. If you are brave, you may follow one. But remember, what you embrace, you make real. What you reject, you may never touch again." Vespera pressed her hand tighter against the horse, as though grounding herself. Her heart raced with both longing and fear. She had never been offered such a choice. She had never imagined she could shape something so immense. The keeper's cloak rustled, and their voice softened into almost a lullaby. "You are not bound to choose tonight. The carousel spins for as long as you ride. But the longer you remain, the clearer your truest wish will become." The words wrapped around her like a blanket, comforting, yet heavy with gravity. She stared into the visions, shimmering at the edge of the carousel, each one more beautiful than the last. A garden where every flower opened to whisper secrets of the stars. A bridge of light stretching across oceans, carrying her toward unknown shores. A hand, warm and steady, reaching out to clasp hers. Her breath shook. Were these hers? Or were they remnants of others that had brushed against her soul? The carousel slowed again, its music humming in patience. The keeper stood silent now, their presence like a shadowed star, watching her, waiting. Vespera closed her eyes. She let the wind sweep against her skin, let the pulse of the music steady her racing heart. She thought of what the keeper had said about power, about choice, about the truest wish. Quiet mornings where dreams slipped through her fingers. Moments when she wished for something she could never name. She realized, trembling, that she had never truly asked herself what she wanted most. The carousel turned once more, slow and deliberate, carrying her through the visions like pages in a book she had yet to read. She opened her eyes, and each sight struck her deeper, a thread pulling tighter inside her chest. The keeper's voice returned, low, almost tender. "Do not fear the weight of longing. It is longing that shapes the soul. Let the dreams speak to you. In time, you will know which one is yours." Vespera's lips trembled. She wanted to answer, but words fell useless. Instead, she bowed her head, pressing her cheek against the horse's mane, and let her tears fall into starlight. The carousel held her, the keeper waited. The night stretched endless, fragile, and infinite, and within it, her heart began to listen. The choice of the moon. Vespera drifted deeper into the carousel's embrace, its golden poles gleaming as though spun from dawn itself. The horses lifted and fell with a rhythm that felt older than time, their hooves striking invisible ground, each echo rolling into her chest like a heartbeat around her. The landscape unfurled, not in one direction, but in all waves of visions, rippling outward as if the night sky itself had broken into 1,000 mirrored shards. Each fragment reflected a life, a possibility, a dream once born and long forgotten. She stood, though she could not remember ever rising from her seat, her bare feet still brushing against something that felt like both moss and starlight. The carousel's music softened to a single chord that stretched endlessly, and before her eyes began the unfurling of her own story, yet not the story she remembered, but the story she had lived only in silence, in longing, in the secret corners of her heart. The first vision drifted forward like mist rising from a lake. It was her as a child, running barefoot through the garden she once knew, chasing after a kite that she had never been given in waking life. Its tail streamed silver and crimson ribbons, flickering like comets. She laughed, a sound she had not heard from herself in years, pure, unbound, filled with joy so complete that it stung her eyes. Another vision shimmered beside it, herself older, sitting at a table carved from driftwood, surrounded by faces she did not know, yet each one felt familiar, a family that had never been hers in the waking world. But in this dream, they leaned close, listening to her words, eyes gleaming with affection and warmth. She felt her heart ache with the hunger of belonging, a longing she had carried silently through sleepless nights. The carousel spun again, and a third vision appeared, herself standing on the prow of a ship that cut across a sea of molten gold, the air alive with salt and possibility. She wore a cloak of midnight feathers, her hair loosed to the wind, her eyes steady on horizons unknown. She had never sailed a ship in her life, yet this vision filled her with the freedom of uncharted waters and endless skies. The keeper's voice rose from within the carousel's hum, gentle and steady as the pulse of the moon. These are the shadows of what could be, the whispers of what was never chosen. Every soul carries such possibilities. Some are left behind, forgotten in the press of time. But dreams do not die. They gather here. They wait for someone to remember them, to give them breath. The visions swayed and danced around her, fragile as smoke, yet brilliant as lightning caught in glass. They pressed close, wrapping her in a warmth that felt like belonging, like a promise that she could choose any of them, hold them, and keep them as her own. But then came others, and Vespera saw not only her dreams, but those of strangers floating through the silver light, a child's wish for a friend to hold their hand, a mother's hope to see her child's laughter return, a wanderer's quiet prayer for a place to rest, if only for a night. The air thickened with countless petals of longing, drifting around her like snowflakes woven of moonlight. She reached out and touched one. It quivered at her fingertip and opened like a blossom of pure light. In it, she saw a boy standing alone beneath a broken lantern, clutching a wooden horse. His lips whispered words she could not hear, but his eyes pleaded for something more: companionship, safety, the courage to step out of the shadows. The keeper's voice returned, solemn and low. Do you wish to keep these dreams for yourself, Vespera? To live them, to breathe them, to let them weave into your own story? Or will you release them so others may find them when they need them most? For dreams, once loosed, will never return. They do not belong to only one heart, but to the world. Vespera trembled. The carousel's music grew softer, quieter, until it was no more than a breath against her skin. Her visions still shimmered close, and her heart cried out for them. She longed for the laughter she had never known, the family she had never been given, the adventures she had never dared to take. All of them were here, within reach, like ripe fruit on branches, bowing under their own sweetness. Her hand lingered near one, the vision of herself on the golden ship. The wind tangled in her hair, her laughter alive in her throat, her eyes ablaze with daring. She wanted that. She wanted it so fiercely, it hurt, and yet her gaze drifted back to the boy beneath the broken lantern, his small hands clutching the wooden horse, his eyes wide with unspoken need. That dream had weight, and it was not hers. Could she take her own desires and still let him wander empty-handed? The moon above glowed brighter, pale silver beams slanting through the carousel, painting the horses in ghostly hues. Each one seemed to breathe, their glass eyes reflecting her indecision. Dreams are not only gifts, the keeper whispered. They are bridges. To hoard them is to seal the path. To release them is to weave the world together. Vespera closed her eyes. For a moment, she let the silence hold her. The carousel did not turn. The music did not play. There was only the hush of her breath and the pulse of the world, deep and steady. She thought of her own heart, how it had carried emptiness like a hollow vessel for so long. She thought of those countless petals, drifting, waiting for someone to release them back into the sky. Her choice came like a tide, quiet and inevitable. She exhaled, long and soft, as though surrendering to the night itself. Her fingers loosened from the vision she had almost kept. "I will release them," she whispered. "All of them. They are not mine to hold. Let them return. Let them find the ones who need them most." The carousel shuddered gently, as if exhaling with her. The visions dissolved into streams of silver light, unraveling like threads from a tapestry. One by one, they lifted, spun, and scattered into the night, each turning into a petal, a star, a feather drifting on unseen winds. They floated upward, outward, into skies and fields and doorways far beyond her reach. Vespera felt the emptiness rush in for a moment, like standing at the edge of a vast ocean with no vessel to cross it. But then came something else. A warmth bloomed in her chest, deeper than longing, gentler than joy. It was a quiet certainty, the sense that she had become part of something vast and unbroken. Though she had released her dreams, they did not leave her diminished. They carried her heartbeat into the world, into other souls who might one day find courage, laughter, or love because she had chosen to let go. The carousel glowed brighter. Its music rose again, no longer faint, but full, radiant, woven of 1,000 voices, singing softly at once. The horses lifted their heads higher, manes rippling as though in wind. Around her, the clearing itself shimmered with light, the fireflies dancing in reverence. The keeper's figure emerged once more, cloaked in the shimmer of starlight, their shadowed face inclined toward her. "You have chosen well," they said. "The moon itself bears witness. When dreams are freed, they do not vanish. They return as blessings in shapes unseen. Perhaps not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but someday, Vespera, the world will return them to you changed, yet still your own." She lifted her gaze to the silver disk above. The moon seemed closer, brighter, as though nodding in approval. She felt its light fall upon her skin like cool silk, a reminder that though she had released her dreams, the night had not abandoned her for a long moment. Vespera simply stood, watching the petals of silver drift into infinity. She felt neither regret nor sorrow, only a quiet fullness, a peace as soft as dew. The carousel began to slow, its music settling into a lullaby. The world around her stilled, the visions gone, yet she carried their echo deep within. The horses froze once more, their hooves lifted mid-stride, waiting, and Vespera knew this was not the end. The carousel had more to show her. The moon had more to ask. But for now, the choice she had made shimmered in her chest like a lantern unextinguished, guiding her toward dawn and return. The first light of dawn crept gently into the forest, spilling across the moss and dew-soaked leaves in pale golden threads. It was not a harsh light, not the blaze of a full day, but a tender kind of illumination, like a secret whispered from the horizon to the trees. The world seemed to sigh with relief as shadows softened, and the endless blue-black of night surrendered to the gradual bloom of morning. The carousel slowed, its once lively rhythm of rise and fall, of hooves and gleaming brass poles circling through infinity, began to ease into stillness. The music that had woven through Vespera's veins, delicate and haunting as the breath of stars, dimmed into silence. Each horse grew quiet, their shimmering manes settling, their glassy eyes softening back into the stillness of crafted forms. Vespera sat for a long moment, her hand resting against the brass pole she had clung to through the night. She felt the echo of the carousel's motion still vibrating in her bones, as if she would forever carry the rhythm of its turning in her heartbeat. When she finally slid down from the horse, her bare feet touched the moss once more, cool and wet with dawn's first dew. She turned back. The carousel still glowed faintly, bathed in silver light that seemed reluctant to fade. It pulsed once, as though acknowledging her choice, her courage, her surrender. Then its brilliance softened into pale memory. The clearing itself began to shift, the air thick with the subtle movement of magic slipping away. Where once golden fireflies had danced in luminous constellations, now only a few drifted lazily in the softening mist in her hand. She noticed something she had not before: single silver feather, light as breath, yet firm in her grasp. It shimmered faintly in the growing daylight, not entirely opaque, not entirely transparent, but hovering somewhere between. It was cool to the touch, yet warmer than stone, a paradox of texture that only dream-born things could hold. She did not remember plucking it, nor did she recall the carousel placing it in her palm, and yet she knew it was her proof, her fragment of the night, her key. Vespera brought the feather close, and for a moment she thought she heard the carousel's song echo faintly within it, a lullaby wrapped in the whisper of wind. She clutched it tighter. The forest was no longer the endless silver kingdom she had wandered through hours before. Its trees, once bathed in moonlight, now stood ordinary but gentle, their bark dark and damp with dew, their leaves trembling softly in the hush of dawn's breeze. Mist clung low to the ground, weaving between roots and stones like lingering threads of dream. The world was quieter now, more fragile, as if holding its breath. Vespera turned away from the carousel. She hesitated, half fearing that if she looked back again, the clearing would already be empty, the carousel nothing more than memory. A part of her wanted to run to it, to press her hand against the brass poles, to beg it to stay, to spin once more. But she had chosen. She had released the dreams, set them free like petals scattered across the skies. To cling would be to break the balance she had given herself to protect. So she walked. Her steps were slow, measured, the moss cushioning each one. She followed no pathet, parting branches just enough, softening the ground beneath her bare feet. The air grew warmer with each step, the silver hush of night giving way to the golden sigh of morning. She passed a brook, its waters catching the new light like molten amber. She paused there, kneeling beside it. Her reflection stared back at her, though even that seemed different. The girl in the water was not the same Vespera who had entered the forest. Her eyes glowed faintly, not with magic, but with quiet knowing. There was weight in them, and yet peace, as though she had carried the night with her, but learned to let it rest. The feather shimmered against her reflection, and for a moment she wondered if it would vanish, dissolve into ripples. But it stayed, Vespera continued. Birdsong began to thread through the trees, hesitant at first, a single note, then another, then a chorus. The forest seemed to wake with her, as if it too had been caught in the spell of the carousel and now stretched into day. Rabbits darted across her path, their fur damp from grass, still jeweled with dew. A fox blinked at her from the undergrowth, its eyes sharp but not unkind, before slinking away. Everywhere, life stirred, and in each stirring, Vespera thought she saw a fragment of the dreams she had released, a flash of silver in a bird's wing, a glimmer in the fox's eyes, the laughter of water leaping over stones. The dreams were not gone. They had simply taken root, scattered and hidden, waiting to bloom in other lives. in other hearts. Her chest ached, but not from sorrow. It was a fullness that felt almost too great to hold, as if her ribs could not contain all the wonder that pressed against them. Hours or, perhaps, minutes. Time felt fragile past as she walked. Eventually, the forest thinned. Light grew stronger, no longer filtered through thick canopies, but breaking through in clear golden shafts. The edge of the forest appeared, and beyond it, the faint outlines of her world, her home. Vespera paused at the threshold, where shadow met sun. The feather gleamed once more in her hand, catching the full light of dawn. For the first time, it looked less like silver and more like something else, something fluid, woven of moonlight and morning both. She wondered if others would see it at all, or if it would remain invisible. A treasure only her heart could know. She held it close to her chest, then stepped out of the forest. The village stirred in the distance, smoke curling gently from chimneys, roosters crowing. The world as ordinary as it had always been, and yet nothing felt ordinary now. Every sound was sharper, every color deeper. The sky stretched, vast and infinite, above her, its pale blue so achingly beautiful she wanted to weep. The very earth beneath her feet seemed alive with quiet magic. No one would know what she had seen. No one would know of the carousel, of the keeper of dreams, of the countless visions she had set free. They would look at her and see only Vespera, the girl they had always known. And perhaps that was right. Some magic was not meant to be explained. Some truths lived best in silence. In the quiet spaces of memory and heart, she walked through the village, her hand never straying far from the feather. Its presence was enough, proof that the carousel of moonlit dreams had been real, not just a fleeting vision, not just a fancy spun from darkness and starlight. Real. And yet, she thought, perhaps it did not matter whether anyone else believed her. The dreams would find their way into the world regardless. A lonely child would stumble upon laughter. A wanderer would discover courage. A family would find one another again. The petals she had released would drift until they found their rightful places, touching lives in ways unseen. Vespera smiled, small but radiant. As she reached her home, she paused at the door. The forest behind her still whispered faintly, carrying the echo of carousel music she knew she might never hear again. She closed her eyes and pressed the feather to her lips, letting gratitude spill silently from her heart. Then she stepped inside. The day had begun, yet within her, the night lingered soft, infinite, eternal, a memory of silver light and starlit horses, a reminder that dreams, once freed, would always return, though not always in the shapes one expected. She carried that truth quietly, like a lantern cupped in her palms. And as dawn stretched higher, painting the world in gold, Vespera felt her heart lighter than it had ever been, filled with wonder, filled with hope, for she knew now some magic must remain free. Some magic must belong not to one soul, but to all who seek it, all who dream. And somewhere in the quiet heart of the forest, the carousel of moonlit dreams waited silent, patient, hidden, waiting for the next dreamer to wander barefoot through the moss, guided by fireflies, called by whispers in the wind. And when they came, Vespera's released dreams would be there, too, woven among the countless others, shining like silver petals, ready to take flight once more. Thank you for joining me tonight. Here on Whispers of the Night, I hope the Carousel of Moonlit Dreams carried you gently toward rest and wonder. Remember, the night always holds a little magic, waiting quietly for you. Until we meet again, sweet dreamer, good night.